So, Father Sebastian, right? Is that how you like to be addressed?
That's my official stage name. Nom de plume, stage name, public personality, and it is. And Father Sebastian likes Starbucks.
Blood free Starbucks? Nah, just kidding.
No, pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice. Yeah, it's the best.
Yes.
I love it. Really excited to talk to you because like I told you earlier, I've been going down this rabbit hole. I'm like neck deep
Hmm?
in this whole stuff. And um, I ran
1 second,
across,
I got to change my fangs.
oh, no problem. I'm here with
Okay.
Father Sebastian, who is, I'm assuming a legend in the vampire world. I've just recently discovered the vampire community, which actually I'm really surprised at how big of a community it actually is. But the first thing I
Okay.
want to talk about is, are you a vampire? Do you consider yourself a vampire?
I've done everything there is to do in the vampire culture. I've all the different tribes of vampires, from role player to lifestyler to scholar. I've done it all. I've experimented with everything. So, where I come from, I follow the old school vampire tradition. Okay, which is where you spell vampire with a Y, Vampyre. Okay, and that is the tradition of vampirism that is differentiates the lifestyle and the practice of vampirism, of identifying as a vampire or using the vampire archetype to empower yourself. And vampire with an I is the legend and myth.
I think it's fascinating the history behind vampirism and like also just the types of people. Let's get into that. But I want to know
Okay.
about you. I mean, I've spoken to some people like John Browning that claims that there are real vampires in a sense that they actually crave blood. There are psychic
Yes.
vampires that can suck your energy. And these are people that are not doing cosplay, that these are people that actually feel like they have a natural urge, this animal instinct to drink blood. Would you consider yourself a real vampire?
Well, I don't consider them real vampires. All
Ah,
right, real vampires like Lestat or Dracula. Okay. I make my living as a professional vampire. Okay. I wrote Black Veils, which is the premier book on vampire culture, and it has defined vampire culture. Okay. And the uh, the different types of people that identify as vampires are much, much more diverse than a lot of people think. And what's important to be aware of is that um, real vampires, if you want to talk about people with blood fetish or they believe that they need to have blood to survive, okay, or that they have an energy deficiency and they need to take life force or emotional energy from people, they exist. But are they real vampires?
that's the
Okay,
question.
there's no such thing as there's no such thing as Lestat or Dracula, as far as I know. Okay, there has never been a real vampire like that has existed, that lives forever, is burned by sunlight and all that stuff. It's a mythology, it's an archetype, it's a shadow of our culture, it's a monster that we can become. Until 1995, vampires were, you think you're an axe murderer if you claim to be a vampire. But around 1995, everything changed. 1995 was the pivotal year. That was the year that was the catalyst year. Okay, where before that there was the Temple of the Vampire, the Order of the Vampire, a couple zines, Vampire the Masquerade, actually changed everything. And when I played Vampire the Masquerade, I would go into the back rooms of nightclubs in Manhattan, and that's where I met people who actually identified as vampires because they were using the role playing game as a masquerade. In New York, LA, and Chicago, no, New York, LA, and Seattle are the three places that vampire subcultures actually gathered in between 91 and 95.
And so, from your point of view, you see this explosion in around 95
Yeah.
where the culture has now allowed, like you said, coming out of the coffin, people feel more comfortable
Yeah.
in that role. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, the concept of real vampires in a sense is not real, right? Because there are no real
Well, I
vampires.
mean,
So
if you
who
call
are
people
these
that
sanguinarians?
sanguinarians are people that identify with the need to drink blood, and there's different motivations. Let me make it really clear. Okay. Here's the philosophy that I handle. Okay. No one in there's no medical or psychological evidence whatsoever that there are people that need to drink blood for their mental, physical, or spiritual health. There is none. Okay. If a scientific study proves otherwise, great. I'm all for science. Okay. And psychology. Second, people who identify as sanguinarian vampires are extremely rare. Okay. And the majority of people that go on TV and claim to be sanguine vampires are doing it for their 15 minutes of fame. Okay. It's what all the journalists that come to me ask me to do. Do you drink blood? And I tell them, no blood drinking at my events. It's takeout only. Okay.
Well,
What you do in your hotel room as a consenting adult is your business.
well, and that's why I wanted to talk to you because you're in this community. You just told me you went to a vampire ball, which is awesome. You know what I mean? Like you're part of that. So I don't know about this community. And granted, the thing that attracted me to the story is this concept of people who really need to drink blood. But once I started digging in, I started bumping into some very concerning things on the web. Like I think there's a website called vampires.com where this person wrote an article about the best vein to tap into. And what concerns me about that is that, I mean, I'm not a medical professional, but that sounds really dangerous. If
It's dangerous. There's two levels of danger that come with that. One is the obvious hepatitis, syphilis, all that jazz. Okay. The second problem is you need to be a licensed phlebotomist to remove blood from a human being.
right. Well,
Okay.
my thing is that there is no warning on this article at all saying that this is a bad idea. The only bad vein that the person, the author wrote was the jugular. They're like, stay away from the jugular. But they were talking about like the vein, you know, this vein right here, or they were talking about there's an artery right here. You don't. I talked to a doctor about this, you know. And I was like,
Okay.
if you puncture an artery, it is high pressure. It will gush just like a Kill Bill movie. You know what I mean?
Just like Kill Bill, or in the movie What We Do in the Shadows, when he like cut the girl's vein and it was squirting out, and he's like, "You must make the last meal very comfortable."
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's
what you're saying is that you're in this community and you're saying, hey, you know what? I know a lot of vampires, quote unquote vampires, but the actual sanguinarian vampires, like the ones that attracted me to this story to begin with, those are really rare or just trying to get attention.
they're extremely rare. I mean, I have done blood play with my lovers on fully consensual things where we've used lancelets and I've drank in their blood. Okay, but that is a kink, and that is erotic, and that is sacred, and that is ritual. Okay, that's my perspective. I mean, I'm not here to speak on behalf of everyone. Okay,
But it's a
but
fetish.
I'm telling you, it is a fetish. But there are people that truly believe they need to drink blood to survive.
But I
Okay,
could also
and
think that this
let's
cup of
look at the
coffee is essential. Oh, it's invisible. That's kind of cool. But I could also say that this cup of
yes,
coffee is essential for me
ghostly,
to
obvious
survive.
good at coffee.
Yeah, you might be a vampire, but I drink ghost coffee. But no, but I mean, if I believe something is good for my health or something is gonna that I consume is gonna keep me alive, that's basically a placebo effect, essentially, where
And
I just
placebos are extremely powerful.
absolutely.
Okay, placebos are ridiculously powerful, and the human mind is an amazing thing. If you think you're sick or you think you're negative, you're going to be sick or negative. Okay, um, I I have met people who drink blood. Yes, I throw the largest network of vampire events on Earth for 25 years. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary. Okay, and those are the Endless Night Vampire Ball events, which I started to be able to let my FANG clients, because I'm a dental technician, gather and dress up and have a place to go to wear their fangs. And we just did our first event in Salem, and we had 700 people,
And
and it
and
was
out of all
really
those
beautiful.
people, most of them are there because they feel like they're part of this community, and they
No,
might
they
have
feel like they
different.
want to dress up and wear fangs and
Right.
see good entertainment and meet amazing people. So this book is an inspiration. This book came from a nightclub that I used to run called Long Black Veil, and the black veils were the code of conduct for the nightclub. The black veils were the code of conduct for the nightclub. So the first black veil was what happens in LBV stays in LBV. What you got to be 18 and enter 21 to feed, adults only. Wear all black, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, take out only. So people wouldn't come to the club and drink blood.
Right.
Because that's a liability. That's a financial, it's a health code violation.
It's not a sanitary environment.
No, it's not. But what people do in their home under their own auspices, as long as it's legal, safe, sane, and consensual, it's not my problem.
But you just don't want it to be at your event.
I can't have it at my event. It's a safety problem. And I don't want, we actually had a girl in Germany show up at our door and threaten to sue us for false advertising that we were a vampire event. And she brought her feeding kit and asked for the feeding room. I was like, what the fuck? Let's look at the origins of sanguine vampires. There's been blood drinking in every culture, from Christianity to African tribes to Native American tribes. And is that vampiric? In modern sense, yes. Vampires drinking blood is a very modern thing. Okay. So people that identify as sanguinarians or sanguine vampires have every right to believe in what they feel is right, as long as they do it legally, safely, sanely, and consensual, and not at my events. Okay. To me, when I share that energy with someone, it is extremely sacred and not trivialized as a act to go on TV and get publicity. Okay. And the sanguines that I do know that practice, with the exception of maybe Balthazar in New Orleans, okay, have all done it for self-promotion. They're not really sanguines. Most sanguines that I know are very discreet and private and do not go public about what they do.
Yeah, I mean, if you claim to be a real blood-sucking vampire, you're going to get the media's attention. And I always approach stories like this with a lot of skepticism. I get the impression, and I watched one of your YouTube videos where you describe the different types of vampires, that
Sure.
you believe psychic vampires are real and out there, right?
Absolutely, but they're not vampire lifestylers. Okay. Most 99% of psychic vampires do not even realize what they are.
So you're saying, in other words, I want to be clear about this, that there's this lady that I know that she's like kind of Tony Soprano's mom, just like a really mean old lady, and she just sucks the life out of the room. You know what I mean? She doesn't know it, but in my book, she's a psychic vampire, correct?
That's exactly what they are.
So she doesn't know she's a vampire, but I do think that there are people that...
Yeah, but that's the most common type of vampire. And most of them don't wear fangs and don't even know what a vampire subculture is.
But they suck the life out of the room.
Living, correct. Or a cancer patient that's miserable and talking like someone who's sick and like, you know, who's an example of someone who didn't become a psychic vampire is Michael J. Fox. That guy has had a horrible run. Okay. And he's had Parkinson's disease for 30 years. Okay. And he hasn't done it. Well, I watch these YouTube videos of these Parkinson's people that are just like making everybody miserable because they're not catering to their needs. Okay. Cancer patients, negative people. We all know a psychic vampire in our lives.
Yeah, but I mean, those people are negative because circumstantial, right?
Not all circumstantial. It's also environmental, and also they're just negative, bad people. Okay. A psychic vampirism, according to a gentleman by the name of Don Webb, who is the Grand Master of the Order of the Vampire from the Temple from the Order of the Vampire from the Temple of Set, which is the very first vampire organization, released a book recently called Empowering Magic of the Vampire, which is very compatible with Black Veils because it takes things in a positive direction.
So I just want to stop real quick because I've never heard this sentence, cancer patients are bad people. But what you mean is that when you're faced And I just want to know if I'm reading this correct. But when you're faced with Parkinson's or cancer or some life crushing situation, you have two choices. You could be positive or you could succumb to it, right? Is that what you're saying? You're
You
like
can you
perfectly.
can you can have cancer, you can have cancer, but cancer doesn't have you.
I gotcha. What you're saying is really
Okay.
positive. It just came across as really mean.
Well, no. The thing is that I I have a movement disorder. Okay, and for a while my doctors thought it was Parkinson's. So what I did was I was proactive and I went and I checked out everything. Okay, and I'm alive and healthy. Even if I did have Parkinson's, I would be like 99% of my life is not my disease. Okay, and I look to positive people like Michael J. Fox to get me through it. Okay, but when you deal with psychic vampires, you're dealing with the destruction of joy and happiness.
People that
These people
suck
want to
you in.
destroy that in other people.
Right. But I guess what
Okay,
we're
she's on
saying is
top
that
of
we've
life.
now attached these things that happen in real life, like people that have energy diet, like like low iron deficiencies, anemic, and they feel like they need to eat.
Well,
We've
Porphyria,
attached it to a folklore thing. We have people who have drained the
yeah.
room. This has happened forever. People suck the life out of rooms all the time, but we've now attached them to this mythical creature, right? And I'm so glad that we bumped into each other because the last thing I wanted to do was reinforce this media narrative where they don't even like, they just spew out, oh, there's real vampires, people that really need blood. And I'm sure there are people that feel that way. What I wanted to do is also talk about, I mean, what was alarming to me was that article about with no disclaimer, no warning, giving people advice about, you know,
Well, everything's true on the internet. We know that.
I know, but it's so irresponsible because I'm sure somebody's tried that.
Sure, it is.